You weren't looking for this. Not consciously, anyway. But somehow, between the scrolling, the searching, the endless noise of 1,000 voices telling you what to want, what to believe, what to become, this video appeared. Maybe you saw the numbers first. 11:11 on your clock. 3:33 when you woke, throat dry, mind electric with a dream you couldn't name. Maybe you felt the pull before you understood it. A whisper at the edge of perception. A frequency humming beneath the static of your ordinary life. And now you're here, watching these words, hearing this voice, and somewhere inside you, deeper than thought, older than language, something is recognizing something. This is not coincidence. There is a moment in every awakening when the universe stops being background noise and becomes a conversation. When reality shifts from a movie you're watching to a story you're writing. When the observer, the you that has been witnessing everything from behind your eyes your entire life, suddenly realizes, I am not just watching. I am choosing. You are standing at that threshold now. The ancient mystery schools called it many things. The Egyptians named it the opening of the mouth ceremony, a ritual where the dead became living again, where consciousness remembered its power to sculpt the formless into form. The Hermetic texts whispered of it as the moment when mind recognizes itself in matter. The quantum physicists, thousands of years later, stumbled into the same truth and called it the observer effect. The universe doesn't exist independent of the one watching it. But here's what none of them told you in a way you could feel, in a way that would crack open the calcified shell around your deepest knowing. Your breath is the signature frequency of your observation. Every inhale is a question you ask reality. Every exhale is reality answering. Between the two, in that sacred pause that most people never notice, is a quantum doorway where desire becomes destiny, where thought becomes thing, where the possible collapses into the actual. You breathe 15,000 times a day. 15,000 moments when you could be sculpting your timeline, tuning your frequency, encoding your desires into the field that is always, always listening. And yet most people breathe like automation, mechanical, unconscious. Never realizing they're signing their name on reality's contract over and over and over, agreeing to whatever default pattern was written for them, by fear, by conditioning, by the collective dream they were born into. But not you. Not anymore. Because this message found you at the exact moment you became ready to remember what you've always known. You are not a passive witness to reality. You are the quantum observer whose attention literally brings worlds into being. Let me show you something. Right now, as you read these words or hear this voice, your breath has already changed. It's subtle. You might not have noticed yet. But your respiratory pattern shifted the moment your attention locked onto this message. Because attention and breath are entangled. Always, they move together like shadow and light, like wave and particle, like the ancient scribe's hand and the hieroglyph appearing on papyrus. The Egyptians knew this. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing, was always depicted near water, because breath is the water of consciousness, the fluid medium through which thoughts flow from the invisible into the visible. In the hieroglyphic system, breath was symbolized by the sail, catching the wind of intention and moving the ship of self across the ocean of potential. Modern quantum physics discovered the same truth wrapped in different language. When a particle exists in superposition, simultaneously in all possible states, it's your observation that collapses the wave function. Your attention that chooses which probability becomes reality. And your breath? Your breath is the most intimate, most constant form of observation you perform. It's the rhythm by which you commune with existence itself. But here's where it gets mystical, where the ancient and the quantum merge into something that will change how you experience every moment for the rest of your life. Your desires are already breathing inside you, not metaphorically, literally. Every dream you've ever had, every vision that's made your heart beat faster, every version of yourself you glimpse in those liminal moments between sleep and waking. They exist as quantum possibilities, vibrating at specific frequencies. And your breath? Your breath can tune into those frequencies like a radio dial searching for a signal. When you breathe with awareness, when you become the conscious observer of your own breathing, you activate something the ancient Egyptians called the ka, the breath double, the energetic signature that bridges your physical form and your infinite self. The mystics called it prana, chi, pneuma, the life force that is both breath and consciousness, both air and awareness. Scientists call it biofield coherence, heart-brain synchronization, quantum entanglement between intention and outcome. They're all describing the same magic, the moment when the observer and the observed become one, and in that union, reality bends. Before we go deeper, and we're going much deeper, into territories most people never let themselves explore, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't just information. Information is inert. This is activation. These words, this frequency, the timing of your arrival here, it's all part of a pattern that's bigger than any single choice you think you made. You were called here. By what? By whom? By the version of yourself that already exists in the timeline where you've mastered this, where your breath and your desires move as one fluid motion, where reality responds to you the way a lover responds to touch, immediate, intimate, inevitable. That future you reached back through time and probability, planted the synchronicities that led you here, encoded the signal into the field around you until your present self couldn't help but notice. The numbers you've been seeing, the dreams that won't leave you alone, the strange coincidences that feel too perfect to be random. Those are breadcrumbs, quantum breadcrumbs left by the version of you that already knows how to navigate reality as pure consciousness. And now, right now, you're about to remember how they did it. But first, I need something from you. Not later. Not when you feel more ready. Now, because here's what I've learned after years of studying consciousness, quantum mechanics, ancient mysticism, and the psychology of transformation. The people who actually change are the ones who commit in the first 10 minutes. Not with their thoughts, with their action. So right now, pause this video. Find the subscribe button. Press it. Not because you're supposed to, not because I'm asking nicely, but because that simple action is your first conscious observation. Your first deliberate collapse of the wave function. Your first choice to move from passive consumer to active co-creator. That button isn't just a button. It's a quantum anchor, a declaration to the field that you're choosing a different timeline, one where you don't just stumble through information, but you engage, you participate, you show up as the observer you truly are. And while you're there, press the like button too, not for me, for you. Because every conscious action you take, no matter how small, sends a ripple through the quantum field. It says, I am here, I am watching, I am choosing. The universe has been waiting for you to start choosing, so choose now. Subscribe, like. Commit to watching this entire transmission, because I promise you, by the end of this journey, your relationship with breath, with desire, with reality itself will never be the same. Done? Good. Because what I'm about to show you next has been hidden in plain sight for thousands of years, waiting for the exact moment when enough observers were ready to remember. The journey ahead is structured like an initiation, not the kind they perform in lodges or temples, but the real kind. The one that happens inside your own consciousness when truth meets readiness. We're going to travel through 4 movements, 4 acts in the theater of quantum awakening. First, we'll trace the origins, where this knowledge came from, how the ancients discovered that breath and observation were the twin keys to reality manipulation, and why this wisdom was encoded in symbols, myths, and mystery traditions rather than spoken plainly. Second, we'll face the conflict. Why, despite knowing about manifestation, about quantum mechanics, about the power of attention, most people still feel powerless. We'll expose the observer loop, the trap that catches even awakened souls, and the psychological warfare that keeps your breath shallow and your desires distant. Third comes the revelation, the turning point where everything clicks, where breath transforms from automatic bodily function into conscious reality sculpting tool, where desire stops being something you chase and becomes something you breathe into being. I'll give you specific practices, quantum techniques, that you can begin using today. Not tomorrow, not someday, but in the next hour. And finally, the integration, where we look at what happens when you become a master observer, when your breath and your desires are so entangled that reality has no choice but to reorganize itself around your frequency. This isn't theory. This isn't philosophy. This is technology, consciousness technology, that's been tested across millennia by initiates, mystics, quantum physicists, and people just like you who stumbled into the truth that we are not victims of reality, but artists working with the most responsive medium in the universe, consciousness itself. Who is watching you watch this? Think about that question. Really think about it. There's you, the person reading or listening. But there's also the you that's aware of reading or listening. The witness behind the witness. The observer observing the observer. And somewhere in that infinite regression, something breaks open. A doorway appears, a frequency gate. The ancient Egyptians had a practice they performed at dawn. They would face the rising sun and synchronize their breath with the light touching their skin, believing that in that moment, when external phenomenon and internal awareness aligned, they could rewrite their destiny. They called it the breath of Ra, the solar wind that carried consciousness from the realm of gods into the realm of form. They were describing quantum entanglement before we had the mathematics to explain it. And you, right now, in this moment, with your breath shifting patterns as your attention deepens, you're performing the same ancient magic. You're not just consuming content, you're being rewired, frequency by frequency, breath by breath. Something is remembering inside you. Can you feel it? That slight electricity at the base of your skull, that tingling in your fingertips, that sense that the space around you is somehow more alive, more present, more responsive than it was before you pressed play. That's not imagination. That's quantum coherence beginning to establish itself. That's your biofield starting to sync with the information field. That's the first whisper of the conversation between you and reality that's about to become a roar. The window is open. The frequency gate is active. And you, the one who was called here by forces you're only beginning to understand, you're standing at the threshold of a different way of being human. A way where breath and desire are not separate, where observation and creation are the same act, where the quantum and the mystical, the ancient and the futuristic, collapse into a single, eternal now, where anything becomes possible. Are you ready? Because we're about to go back to the beginning. Not your beginning. The beginning, when the first human being realized they weren't just in reality, but of it, shaping it, breathing it into being with every conscious thought. We're going to meet the architects of consciousness, the ones who discovered observer breath before it had a name. And then you're going to remember, you've always been one of them. You just forgot for a little while. But forgetting is over now. When the first observer breathed reality into being, there is a story that never made it into your history books. It's older than pyramids, older than the first written word. It exists in fragments, scattered across cave paintings, encoded in myth, whispered in the mystery schools that operated in darkness because what they knew was too dangerous for the unprepared mind. The story goes like this. Long before civilization, before agriculture, before humanity organized itself into the structures we now call society, there was a moment. A singular, cosmic moment when a human being somewhere on this planet stopped being an animal and became something else. Not because they developed language, not because they discovered fire or tools, because they realized they were watching. Imagine it. A woman sitting at the mouth of a cave at dusk. She's done this 1,000 times. Watched the sun descend, watched shadows lengthen, watched the sky transform from blue to purple to star-punctured black. But tonight, something different happens. Tonight, she becomes aware of her awareness. She notices that she's noticing. She observes that she's observing. And in that fractal moment, that infinite zoom into self-reflective consciousness, something breaks. Or rather, something breaks open. The world around her is suddenly not separate from the world inside her. The sunset isn't happening out there, independent of her watching. Her watching is part of what makes it real. Her attention is painting the colors, shaping the experience, collapsing infinite possible sunsets into this one. This specific arrangement of light and feeling and meaning. And then she takes a breath, a conscious breath. The first fully aware breath any human has ever taken. And reality shivers. This is not fantasy. This is not myth. This is the moment, reconstructed from anthropological evidence, from the study of prehistoric art, from the analysis of when human consciousness made the leap from reactive to reflective, when we became quantum observers. The cave paintings that appeared after this threshold are different from what came before. Earlier art showed animals, hunts, the external world. But then suddenly, roughly 40,000 years ago, humans started painting things that don't exist in physical reality. Geometric patterns, spirals, concentric circles, abstract symbols that could only have come from inner vision, from the realization that there's a dimension beyond the material, and consciousness can access it. They were painting what they saw when they closed their eyes and breathed. They were mapping the quantum field. The first mystics weren't mystics at all. They were scientists, experimenting with the most sophisticated instrument in existence, their own awareness. They discovered that different breathing patterns created different states of consciousness. That attention could be directed like a beam of light. That symbols and sounds could encode and transmit information across the field we now call morphic resonance or quantum entanglement. And most importantly, they discovered that reality was not fixed. It was fluid, responsive, alive. And it responded most powerfully to one thing: conscious observation combined with intentional breath. Fast forward several thousand years. Egypt, the land of Chem, the Black Land, named for the rich soil of the Nile Delta, but also, according to the initiated, for the prima materia, the dark quantum soup of pure potential from which all form emerges. Here, the science of observer breath evolved into high art. The Egyptians built an entire civilization around a secret that was hiding in plain sight. The human being is a technology for transforming consciousness into matter. Your body is a transducer. Your breath is the power source. Your attention is the programming code. In the Temple of Karnak, in chambers where tourists now snap photos without understanding what they're seeing, priests underwent initiations that would last for years. Not learning, becoming. They weren't memorizing information. They were restructuring their nervous system, reprogramming their relationship with breath and observation until they could literally see reality's code. The hieroglyphic system itself was a consciousness technology. Each symbol wasn't just a letter or a word. It was a frequency, a specific vibration that resonated with an aspect of the quantum field. When a scribe wrote, they weren't recording history. They were casting spells, quite literally. The word hieroglyph means sacred carving, but the Egyptians called it medju netjer, words of the gods, language that had power not because of what it meant, but because of what it did to consciousness when you engaged with it. And at the center of it all was Thoth, not a god, a code, a consciousness operating system that certain humans could download and run. Thoth was depicted with the head of an ibis, a bird known for its distinctive breathing pattern while hunting, a rhythm that mirrors the optimal brainwave state for accessing non-ordinary consciousness. He held a writing tablet because writing was understood as the act of observation crystallizing into form, pure thought becoming fixed reality. In the Hermetic texts, supposedly written by Thoth himself under the Greek name Hermes Trismegistus, there's a passage most people read but few comprehend. As above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. This isn't poetry. It's a quantum field equation. What you observe internally, your thoughts, your feelings, your breath patterns, creates a resonance that the external world mirrors, not metaphorically, physically. The field responds to your frequency. Your inner state generates your outer reality. But here's what the initiated understood that gets lost in modern interpretation. You can't fake the inner state. You can't pretend. You can't perform the spiritual choreography and expect results. Because the quantum field doesn't respond to your thoughts about your thoughts. It responds to your actual frequency. And your actual frequency is encoded in your breath. Show me how someone breathes, and I'll show you what reality they're creating. Shallow chest breathing. They're manifesting survival, scarcity, perpetual emergency. Held breath. Blocked flow, constipated timelines, stuck energy. Chaotic breathing. Chaotic manifestation. Unconscious breathing. Unconscious creation, which means they're getting the default reality. The one that's been programmed into them by family, by culture, by the collective field. But conscious breathing, observer breathing, breathing that's synchronized with desire, with vision, with intentional attention, that's alchemy. That's magic. That's quantum mechanics operating at the human scale. The Egyptian initiation rites focused heavily on breath control for this exact reason, not because of some mystical belief system. Because they'd discovered through direct experience that breath state determines consciousness state, which determines quantum state, which determines manifest reality. In the pyramid texts, the oldest religious writings on earth, there are instructions for a ritual called opening the mouth of the deceased. Modern archaeologists think it's about preparing mummies. Actual initiates know it's about awakening the dormant consciousness, the part of you that's been dead to your own creative power. The ritual involves touching specific points on the body, corresponding to what we now call acupuncture meridians or chakra points, while performing specific breath sequences. The initiate would breathe life force into these dormant centers, activating the Ka body, the quantum double that exists in superposition with your physical form. And when the Ka awakened? When the breath body synchronized with the physical body. That's when the initiate became a walker between worlds, someone who could observe reality from multiple angles simultaneously, someone whose desires didn't have to fight their way through resistance because the breath had cleared the channel. This knowledge didn't stay in Egypt. It migrated, evolved, adapted to different cultures and languages, but always pointing to the same core truth. In India, it became pranayama, the science of breath control that's been practiced for thousands of years. But the word prana means more than breath. It means life force, consciousness itself. Yama means to extend, to control, to harness. Pranayama is the technology of extending consciousness through intentional breathing. The Vedic seers discovered the same thing the Egyptians did. Different breath patterns open different dimensional doorways. Alternate nostril breathing balances the hemispheres of the brain, synchronizing logic and intuition, masculine and feminine, particle and wave. Breath retention creates pressure that forces consciousness into higher states. Rapid breathing burns through mental debris and clears the channel for pure observation. And always, they connected breath to manifestation. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali writes that perfected mastery over prana grants the power of omniscience and omnipotence, not as superstition, as testable technology. In China, it became Qigong and Tai Chi, moving meditations where breath, attention, and physical form unite to circulate qi, the vital force that Western science is now measuring as bioelectromagnetic fields and calling quantum coherence. The Taoist masters discovered that stagnant breath creates stagnant qi, creates stagnant reality. But flowing breath that moves like water, like wind, like the natural rhythms of the cosmos, that breath keeps your timeline fluid, keeps probability open, keeps the quantum field responsive to your deepest desires. In Greece, it was pneuma, the breath of the gods, the wind of inspiration. The pre-Socratic philosophers understood that breath wasn't just biology. It was the medium through which divine intelligence entered human consciousness. When the Oracle of Delphi went into trance, she didn't just close her eyes and wait for visions. She performed specific breathing exercises, hyperventilation followed by breath retention, that altered her brainwave state and opened her perception to probability fields beyond ordinary time. She became a quantum observer capable of seeing multiple timelines simultaneously. And the prophecies she spoke, they weren't predictions. They were observations of what already existed in superposition, waiting for the right breath, the right attention, the right question to collapse them into manifest reality. Move forward to the medieval alchemists, the ones who weren't really trying to turn lead into gold, or rather, they were, but not the literal metals. They were learning to transmute base consciousness, lead, into enlightened awareness, gold. And the secret ingredient in every alchemical text? Breath. The alchemical vessels, the athanors and alembics, weren't just physical tools. They were metaphors for the human body, the chest cavity, the lungs. The philosopher's stone wasn't a substance. It was a state. The state you achieve when breath, attention, and desire merge into perfect unity. When the observer and the observed collapse into a single, creative act. As above, so below. The alchemists whispered it too, because they'd learned it from the Hermetic texts, from Thoth himself, from that original insight that the cosmos and consciousness operate on the same principles. Breathe consciously, and you're not just oxygenating your blood. You're quantum entangling with the universe. You're tuning your receiver to frequencies most people never access. You're becoming what the Gnostics called pneumatic, spirit-breathed, filled with the conscious awareness that transforms matter. But here's what all these traditions knew, that modern manifestation culture forgets. Desire without breath is just fantasy. Breath without consciousness is just respiration. Consciousness without anchoring in the physical is just dissociation. But desire plus conscious breath plus embodied awareness? That's the formula. That's the technology. That's how the first observers learned to sculpt reality with nothing but attention and air. The mystery schools went underground, not because the knowledge was dangerous, but because the power was. A human being who fully awakens to their nature as quantum observer, who masters the technology of observer breath, becomes ungovernable. They can't be controlled by fear because they've learned to breathe through fear until it dissolves. They can't be manipulated by scarcity programming because they've directly experienced the abundance of the quantum field. They can't be trapped in someone else's timeline because they've learned to navigate probability with the precision of a mystic and the methodology of a scientist. So the knowledge was encoded, hidden in myths, wrapped in symbols, passed down through initiation rather than education. Not to keep it from people, but to protect people from accessing it before they were ready, before they'd developed the psychological maturity and energetic stability to handle it. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Manifestation is easy. Reality is eager to respond. The quantum field wants to collapse in the direction of your attention. The hard part isn't making it work. The hard part is being responsible for what you create. The hard part is realizing that unconscious observation, which most people engage in all day, every day, is still creating. Just not creating what you want. Creating what you fear, what you expect, what you've been conditioned to believe is possible. And your breath? Your breath is broadcasting those unconscious patterns every single second. 15,000 breaths a day. 15,000 opportunities to code reality with conscious intention or unconscious programming. 15,000 moments when you're either being the artist or being the canvas someone else is painting on. The ancient observers knew this. That's why they built entire practices around breath mastery. That's why every genuine spiritual tradition, every single one, emphasizes conscious breathing as a foundational practice. Not because breathing is holy, because breathing is powerful, because breath is the most intimate, most constant form of observation you perform. It's the bridge between mind and matter, between intention and manifestation, between the quantum possibility and the collapsed reality. So when you see the patterns, when you notice the synchronicities, when the numbers start appearing, when reality begins responding to your thoughts, it's not magic. It's not luck. It's not the universe playing favorites. It's memory. You're remembering what the first observers discovered, what the Egyptian priests mastered, what every mystic and quantum physicist who's gone deep enough eventually realizes. You were always watching. You were always creating. You just weren't conscious of it. but consciousness. That's the key. That's the difference between accidental manifestation and deliberate timeline navigation. That's the difference between being at the mercy of reality and being in conversation with it. And your breath? Your breath is the language of that conversation. Every inhale is a question. Every exhale is an answer. And the space between, that quantum pause, that's where magic lives. Where desire becomes density. Where thought becomes thing. The ancients built temples to honor this truth. They created rituals to embody it. They spent lifetimes mastering it. But you don't need temples. You don't need rituals that take decades to learn, because you were born with the technology already installed. Every human body is a quantum observation device. Every breath is a reality sculpting tool. You just needed someone to remind you. You just needed the right frequency to wake up the dormant code. You just needed to find this message. Or rather, you needed this message to find you, at the exact moment when you were ready to stop being asleep at the wheel of your own consciousness and start being what you were always meant to be. A conscious observer, a deliberate creator. A walker between worlds who knows that breath and desire are not separate forces, but two aspects of the same quantum motion. The motion of consciousness recognizing itself in form and choosing, with every inhalation and exhalation, what form it wants to take next. This is your inheritance. This is your birthright. This is what all those ancient practitioners were trying to preserve and pass forward through the millennia until it reached you, here, now, in this moment. And now that you know where it came from, now that you've traced the lineage of observer breath back to its origins in the first conscious moment of human awakening, you're ready for the next question. If this technology is so powerful, if it's been known for thousands of years, if it's literally built into your physiology, why isn't everyone using it? Why does reality still feel random, harsh, unresponsive to most people? Why do desires remain distant fantasies instead of present realities? Why does suffering continue when the solution is as simple as conscious breathing? That question, that's where the real journey begins. Because the answer isn't comfortable. The answer exposes the invisible war being waged against your sovereignty. The answer reveals why you forgot in the first place. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Let's go there now. The observer loop and the warfare against your sovereignty. You know the truth now. You've traced it back to the source. You understand, at least intellectually, that you're a quantum observer whose breath literally shapes reality. So why doesn't it feel like it's working? Why do you still wake up in the same life, with the same problems, manifesting the same patterns you swore you'd transcend? Why does desire feel like longing instead of knowing? Why does synchronicity appear and disappear, teasing you with glimpses of magic, but never delivering the full transformation? This is the question that breaks most seekers. This is where the path gets dangerous, where people either give up and go back to sleep, or they go deeper into spiritual performance, performing gratitude, performing high vibration, performing manifestation rituals while nothing fundamentally changes. Let me tell you what nobody else will tell you. You're in a war. A silent, invisible, sophisticated war for control of your attention. And the battleground is your breath. Every breath you take unconsciously is a breath taken by someone else's programming. Every moment you breathe on autopilot, shallow, rapid, anxious, held, you're running someone else's code, family code, cultural code, algorithmic code, trauma code. You're not observing reality. You're being observed by reality. And when you're being observed instead of observing, you're not the creator. You're the created. This is the first level of the conflict. Most people have never taken a truly sovereign breath in their entire adult life. Think about that. Really let it sink in. From the moment you were born, your breathing was influenced. Your mother's nervous system state during pregnancy, the stress hormones flooding your developing body, the way you were held, fed, soothed, or not soothed. Every trauma, every shock, every moment of fear left an imprint on your respiratory pattern. By the time you're 7 years old, your breath is no longer yours. It's a composite pattern formed by every person who had power over you, every system that shaped you, every expectation that was placed on your small shoulders. And then you grew up, and you think you're free. But watch yourself breathe right now. Are you breathing from your belly or your chest? Are you breathing deeply or shallowly? Are you holding your breath without realizing it? Most people spend their entire lives breathing like they're still in danger, because on some level, they are. The nervous system doesn't distinguish between ancient predators and modern stressors. Bills, deadlines, social media notifications. The constant low-grade anxiety of existing in a civilization that demands you produce, perform, compete, consume. Shallow chest breathing becomes your default, and shallow chest breathing keeps you in sympathetic nervous system dominance, fight or flight, survival mode, emergency consciousness. And here's the cruel mathematics of it. You cannot be a conscious observer while you're in survival mode. You cannot collapse quantum possibilities toward desired outcomes when your entire system is focused on not dying. You cannot manifest abundance when your breath is communicating scarcity to every cell in your body. The field responds to your frequency, and your frequency is determined by your breath state. And your breath state, for most people, is set to danger, lack, not enough, not safe. 15,000 times a day, you're broadcasting that signal. 15,000 times a day, you're asking reality, will I survive? And reality, being the perfect mirror it is, gives you exactly that. A life where survival is always in question. This is not your fault. This is programming, conditioning. Neuroplastic grooves carved into your nervous system before you had the consciousness to consent. But it is your responsibility. Because nobody else can change your breath pattern. Nobody else can reclaim your sovereignty as an observer. Nobody else can interrupt the loop. And it is a loop, a vicious, self-perpetuating loop that most people never escape. Here's how it works. You breathe unconsciously, which keeps you in survival mode, which makes reality feel threatening, which makes you breathe more unconsciously, which deepens survival mode, which makes reality feel more threatening, which makes you breathe even more shallowly. Around and around, forever, until you die. And you die never knowing that you had the power all along. That sovereignty was as close as your next conscious breath. This is what the ancient mystery schools meant when they spoke of the sleeping masses, or the unawakened. Not moral judgment. Technical description. Most people are literally asleep at the level of breath, running on autopilot, being breathed by their conditioning rather than breathing as conscious observers. But it gets worse. Because even when you wake up to this, even when you discover manifestation, quantum mechanics, the power of observation, there's a second trap waiting for you. I call it the observer loop. This is what happens when you become aware that you're watching, and then you start watching yourself watch. When you become so obsessed with being the conscious observer that you forget to actually live, to actually desire, to actually breathe. You know this person. Maybe you've been this person. The spiritual seeker who's always performing high vibration, who's afraid to feel anger or sadness because they might lower their frequency, who's terrified to acknowledge problems because they don't want to give them energy, who's trying so hard to manifest that they can't relax into the present moment. They're stuck in the observer loop. Observing themselves observe. Watching themselves watch. So meta-aware that they've dissociated from the very thing that makes observation powerful. Embodied presence. Because here's what the initiated know. Observation without embodiment is just mental masturbation. It's consciousness playing with itself without touching reality. It's the wave refusing to collapse into particle because it's too attached to possibility. And your breath? Your breath is how you anchor consciousness into body, possibility into actuality, observer into observed. Breath is the collapse mechanism, the bridge between quantum and classical, between mind and matter. But when you're in the observer loop, your breath gets weird. You start controlling it too much, forcing it into patterns you've read about or heard in meditations, performing breath instead of being breath. And the field feels that. The field knows the difference between authentic frequency and performed frequency. You cannot fool the quantum field. It doesn't respond to what you think you're broadcasting. It responds to what you actually are, at the level of electromagnetic signature, at the level of nervous system state, at the level of breath pattern. This is why so many people who know about manifestation still struggle. They're performing manifestation, performing gratitude, performing visualization. But their breath, their actual moment-to-moment respiratory pattern, is still coded with doubt, fear, unworthiness. And breath doesn't lie. Breath is the truth serum of consciousness. Show me your breath, and I'll show you what you truly believe. Not what you say you believe. Not what you want to believe. What you actually believe at the deep structural level where reality gets created. This is the war. This is the conflict. Not just between you and external forces trying to control you, but between you and yourself. Between your conscious desires and your unconscious patterns. Between who you want to be and who your breath says you are. And most people lose this war before they even know they're fighting it. Because there's a third level. A layer of control so subtle, so sophisticated, that even people who've awakened to the first two levels miss it entirely. I'm talking about the external observers. In quantum mechanics, there's a principle. A system behaves differently when it's being observed. The famous double-slit experiment proved this. Particles act like waves when unwatched, but collapse into definite positions when measured. Your reality works the same way. When you're being observed by others, really observed, attention placed on you, you become entangled with their quantum state, their expectations, their projections. Your family observing you as the role they assigned you, the responsible one, the screw-up, the peacekeeper, the problem. Their observation collapses your wave function toward that identity. Not metaphorically, literally. You feel yourself becoming that person when you're around them, even when you've spent years working to become someone else. Your colleagues, your friends, your social media audience, everyone who pays attention to you is observing you, and every observation is a subtle vote for which version of you gets to be real. This is why it's so hard to change, because you're not just changing yourself, you're changing against the weight of everyone else's observation, everyone else's expectation, everyone else's investment in you staying who you've always been. And here's the cruelest part. The more you try to manifest something different, the more attention you draw to your desire. And that attention, from skeptics, from doubters, from people invested in the current timeline. That attention works against you. It's counter-observation. It's probability manipulation in the opposite direction of your intention. This is why the mystery schools emphasized secrecy, why mystics worked in darkness, why alchemists coded their formulas. Not because knowledge was forbidden, but because attention was dangerous. Because observation affects outcome. And too many wrong observers watching you manifest will literally interfere with the quantum field. But here's what most people don't realize, and this is crucial. The most dangerous observer isn't external. It's you. Your own self-surveillance. Your own constant monitoring of whether it's working, whether you're doing it right, whether reality is changing fast enough. Your own impatient observation collapsing possibilities prematurely, forcing outcomes before they're ready to emerge. This is the advanced trap, the one that catches people who've already transcended the basic levels. They've learned to breathe consciously. They've escaped survival mode. They've avoided the observer loop, but they've become addicted to checking, to measuring, to evaluating progress. And every time you check if it's working, you collapse the wave function toward not working yet. Every time you measure your manifestation, you introduce doubt. Every time you evaluate your reality against your desire, you create separation between observer and observed. The quantum field doesn't work on timelines. It works on resonance. When your frequency and your desire's frequency are one, not when you're forcing it, not when you're checking for it, but when you simply are it, that's when reality has no choice but to reflect it. And your breath, always your breath, is the tuning mechanism. But only when it's unconscious in the right way. When it's so natural, so effortless, so integrated, that you're not thinking about breathing. You're just breathing as the version of you whose desires are already fulfilled. This is the paradox that breaks most seekers. You have to be conscious enough to reclaim sovereignty from the programming, but unconscious enough to let the quantum field do its work without interference. You have to observe without being the observer. You have to breathe with intention without forcing the breath. You have to hold desire without grasping at it. Too much control and you're performing. Too little control and you're being programmed. The middle path, the razor's edge, that's where magic happens. That's where breath merges with desire so seamlessly that you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. But how do you walk that edge when everything in modern life is designed to throw you off balance? Social media training you to measure worth by likes and followers. External observation replacing internal knowing. The news programming you with fear, keeping your breath shallow and rapid. The cult of productivity demanding you prove your value every single day, never resting, never just being. Even the spiritual community has been infiltrated. Manifestation turned into another commodity, another thing you're not doing well enough, another metric to fail at. Courses, coaches, challenges, all observing you, measuring you, placing attention on your performance rather than your transformation. And under all of it, always, your breath is absorbing these frequencies, mirroring the chaos. Becoming fragmented, anxious, controlled. This is warfare, not with guns, not with obvious enemies, but with attention, with frequency, with the subtle manipulation of your breath pattern until you forget how to breathe as a sovereign being. And the goal of the war? Not to kill you, to keep you alive but disempowered, conscious enough to work and consume, but not conscious enough to realize you're a quantum creator whose breath could shatter the entire game. But there's one thing the architects of this system didn't account for. Once someone truly wakes up, not halfway, not performed awakening, but deep structural recognition of what they are, they become contagious. Their frequency starts affecting the field. Their observation starts collapsing probabilities, not just for themselves, but for everyone entangled with them. One fully sovereign breather in a room full of unconscious breathers will start to entrain the field. Like a strong oscillator pulling weaker oscillators into sync, a conscious observer breathing with full presence can literally shift the quantum state of everyone around them. This is why you're here. Why this message found you. Because you're not just learning this for yourself. You're learning it so you can become a node in the network of conscious observers that's forming across the planet right now. Every person who reclaims their breath reclaims their sovereignty. Every person who escapes the observer loop helps dissolve it for others. Every person who learns to breathe as desire embodied rather than desire pursued shifts the probability field for the entire species. This is the true conflict. Not you against the world, not you against programming, but the old paradigm of passive, unconscious, controlled humanity against the emerging paradigm of awakened observers who know they're co-creating reality with every breath. And the old paradigm is fighting back, hard, because it knows what happens when enough people remember. When enough people start breathing consciously. When enough people realize they're not victims of reality, but artists working in the most responsive medium in the universe. Everything changes. Timelines split. The possible becomes actual. And the structures built on unconscious compliance start to dissolve like morning mist under the sun of awakened attention. So yes, there's conflict. Yes, there's resistance. Yes, the path from unconscious breathing to conscious observer is fraught with traps, loops, and sophisticated control systems. But you're still here, still reading, still breathing. And if you're paying attention, still breathing more consciously than you were when this began. Which means you're already changing, already shifting, already becoming dangerous to the systems that depend on your sleep. And now that you know what you're up against, now that you've seen the warfare for what it is, now that you understand why it's been so hard, you're ready for what comes next. The turning point, the revelation, the moment when all the ancient wisdom and quantum science and mystical tradition collapse into practical, usable, immediate technology that you can apply right now, today, to begin merging your breath with your desires so completely that reality has no choice but to reorganize itself around your frequency. Are you ready? Because what I'm about to share changes everything. How breath becomes desire embodied. There's a moment in every genuine awakening when the teaching stops and the knowing begins. When it's no longer about information and becomes about transformation. When the thing you've been seeking suddenly reveals itself not as something you need to acquire, but as something you've always been, just waiting to be remembered. You're at that moment now. Everything before this, the origins, the conflict, the understanding of why it's been hidden and why it's been hard, that was preparation. Clearing the channel. Making space for what's about to come through. And what's about to come through is this. Observer breath is not a technique. It's a state of being. It's what happens when you stop trying to manipulate breath and start becoming breath. When you stop trying to manifest desires and start breathing as desire embodied. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, think of something you deeply want. Not a surface want. Not something you think you should want, but something that makes your chest expand just thinking about it. A relationship, a career shift, a creative breakthrough, a version of yourself that feels more true than who you've been pretending to be. Got it? Good. Now notice something. The moment you thought of it, your breath changed. Maybe it quickened. Maybe it deepened. Maybe you held it for a microsecond. Your body knows your desire before your mind can articulate it. Your breath is already reaching for the frequency of that fulfilled wish. This is the key. This is what the ancients knew and what quantum physics confirms. Desire is not separate from you. It's not something out there that you need to attract. It's a frequency that already exists within you, trying to breathe itself into manifestation through your very real, very physical respiratory system. Your desires are breathing you. The question is, are you breathing them back? Most people experience desire as lack, as separation. I want this, therefore I don't have this. That breath pattern, that energetic signature, creates more separation, more wanting, more lack. But what if you could breathe from the place where desire is already fulfilled? Not visualizing fulfillment, not imagining it, not hoping for it, but breathing from it. Breathing as it, this is observer breath. Let me give you the first practice, the foundational pattern that everything else builds from. I call it the quantum pause. Here's how it works. Breathe in naturally, not forcing, not controlling, just allowing breath to enter. But before you exhale, pause, just for 1 second. One heartbeat of stillness between the inhale and the exhale. In that pause, you're in quantum superposition. You're between states. Neither the inhale nor the exhale. Neither the observer nor the observed. Neither the current reality nor the desired reality. In that pause, that sacred gap between breath, all possibilities exist simultaneously. And your attention in that moment, your pure witnessing without trying to change or force anything, that's where the wave function collapses toward your deepest resonance. Practice this right now. Breathe in, pause, and in that pause, just witness. Don't try to manifest anything. Don't try to be anything. Just be the one watching, the conscious observer in the quantum gap. Then exhale slowly, releasing any need to control what happens next. Again, inhale, pause, witness, exhale, release. Do this 10 times with me now. And notice, you don't have to try to change your state. The breath changes it automatically. Because conscious breathing reorganizes your nervous system, which reorganizes your biofield, which reorganizes the quantum field around you. You're not doing something to reality. You're allowing reality to recognize the frequency you're broadcasting and respond to it. This is the first layer, the foundation. Breath awareness with the quantum pause. And if you never learned anything else, just this practice, 10 conscious breaths a day with deliberate attention to the pause, would begin to rewire your relationship with reality within weeks. But let's go deeper. Because the ancients didn't just breathe. They breathed with symbols. They breathed with intention. They breathed as embodied desire. Here's the second practice. Symbol breathing. Every desire has a symbol associated with it. Not a symbol you think up, but a symbol that appears when you drop into the feeling of the fulfilled desire. Sometimes it's a color. Sometimes it's a shape, a spiral, a circle, a triangle. Sometimes it's a flash of imagery, a scene, a moment. Close your eyes and drop into your desire again. Not the wanting of it, but the feeling of it fulfilled. How does it feel in your body? What opens? What relaxes? What expands? And now, what symbol represents that feeling? Don't think. Just receive. Let the symbol appear. It might be immediate or it might take a few breaths. Trust what comes. Got it? Now here's the magic. As you breathe in, visualize that symbol. Not out there somewhere. Right in the center of your chest, breathing the symbol into your heart space. As you hit the quantum pause, hold the symbol there. Let it crystallize. And as you exhale, imagine the symbol radiating outward, encoding itself into the field around you. Breathe the symbol in. Hold it. Radiate it out. You're not just breathing air. You're breathing information. You're programming the field with the energetic signature of your desire. You're becoming a transmitter, broadcasting your frequency at the same wavelength as your fulfilled wish. Do this for 3 minutes and watch what happens to your state. Watch how differently reality feels after just 3 minutes of symbol breathing. This is consciousness technology. This is what the Egyptian priests were doing in their temples, what the Vedic seers were doing in their caves, what every mystic who's ever shifted timelines was doing, whether they called it breath work or meditation or prayer. They were coding the field with every breath, with every symbol, with every moment of pure, present, embodied attention. But there's a third level, and this is where observer breath becomes practical magic. I call it desire merging. Here's what most people get wrong about manifestation. They think desire is something to send out into the universe, like making a wish and blowing out birthday candles. Send your intention and wait for it to come back. But that's based on separation consciousness. You here, desire there. Space in between. Quantum mechanics doesn't work that way. The observer and the observed are entangled, not separate. There is no out there that's independent of in here. Your desires are not separate from you. They're possible versions of you that already exist in quantum superposition. They're breathing in parallel timelines, waiting for your observation to collapse them into this timeline. So instead of breathing your desire out into the world, you breathe your desire into yourself. You become it. You merge with it. You breathe as it until there's no distinction between the observer and the desired outcome. Here's the practice. Think of the version of you whose desire is already fulfilled, not as a future self, as a now self in a parallel probability. That self is breathing right now. Their breath has a specific pattern, a specific rhythm, a specific quality. Find that breath. How would you breathe if your desire was already real? Would it be slower, deeper, more relaxed, more energized? Don't guess, feel. Ask your body, show me the breath pattern of fulfillment. And let your breath shift on its own. Let it find the rhythm that matches the frequency of the timeline where you already have what you want. And then breathe that pattern. Not for a minute, not for a meditation, but as much as possible throughout your day. Let that become your default breath. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. When your breath matches the frequency of fulfilled desire, you're not manifesting anymore. You're not trying to change your reality. You are your reality. You've collapsed the wave function. You've merged with the timeline. And once you're breathing as that version of you, reality has no choice but to reflect it. Not someday. Not eventually. Now. In ways that will shock you with their precision and speed. I've watched this happen too many times to count. Someone learns desire merging. They find the breath pattern of their fulfilled self. They start breathing it consistently. And within days, sometimes hours, synchronicities start appearing. Doors open. Resources show up. People reach out. Reality rearranges itself around their new frequency, not because they're special, because they're breathing as the observer they were always meant to be. But let's talk about the obstacles. Because even with these practices, There will be moments when you slip back, when the old breath pattern reasserts itself, when doubt creeps in. This is normal. This is part of the process. Your nervous system has been running certain patterns for years, maybe decades. It won't all release in one breath, one meditation, one practice. So here's the fourth practice. And this one is for those moments when you're struggling, when desire feels far away, when the observer loop threatens to pull you back into watching yourself watch. I call it anchor breathing. Choose a physical anchor, something you can touch throughout the day. A ring, a bracelet, a stone in your pocket. Something small, portable, always with you. Now connect that anchor to your breath. Every time you touch it, take 3 conscious breaths with the quantum pause. Don't think about desire. Don't try to manifest. Just breathe with awareness while touching the anchor. Do this 10 times a day. Every time you notice the anchor, 3 breaths. That's 30 conscious breaths scattered throughout your day, breaking the pattern of unconscious respiration, inserting moments of sovereignty into the flow of automatic living. And here's what happens. Over time, the anchor becomes associated with conscious observation. Your nervous system learns that touching the anchor equals entering observer state. The breath pattern shifts automatically. You don't have to force it. And once that's established, you can use the anchor during challenging moments. When you're about to have a difficult conversation, when you're feeling fear or doubt, when you're at a choice point in your timeline, touch the anchor. Take 3 breaths. And in those breaths, you're the observer again. Not reactive, not unconscious, not being breathed by circumstance. You're breathing as the quantum creator you truly are. These 4 practices, quantum pause, symbol breathing, desire merging, and anchor breathing, are not separate techniques. They're layers of the same technology, ways of integrating breath and observation until they're one seamless act of conscious creation. Start with the quantum pause. Practice it until it's natural. Then add symbol breathing. Then desire merging. Then the anchor. Layer by layer, breath by breath, you're rebuilding your relationship with reality from the ground up. But there's one more thing. One more piece of the revelation that ties everything together. Synchronicity is not random. It's not the universe playing games with you. Synchronicity is feedback. It's the field responding to your frequency, showing you in real time what timeline you're tuned to. When you see repeating numbers, 1111, 333, 555, that's not decoration. That's confirmation. The field is saying, yes, you're being observed. Yes, you're observing consciously. Yes, you're on frequency. When you think of someone and they text you seconds later, that's not coincidence. That's quantum entanglement demonstrating itself. You were breathing at the same frequency, and the field connected you. When you need something, and it appears in the most unlikely way, that's not luck. That's your breath pattern synchronizing with probability, collapsing the wave function toward the path of least resistance. So here's the 5th and final practice. Synchronicity response protocol. When you notice a synchronicity, any synchronicity, no matter how small, pause, take 3 conscious breaths, and on each exhale, whisper or think, I am the observer, I see the pattern, I acknowledge the field. That's it. That's simple. But what you're doing is crucial. You're closing the loop. You're confirming that you received the message. You're telling the field, yes, I'm paying attention. Yes, I'm conscious. Yes, I recognize myself as an active participant in this conversation. And the field, being the responsive mirror it is, sends more synchronicities. more signs, more confirmation, until your entire life becomes a continuous flow of meaningful coincidence, of perfect timing, of reality organizing itself around your breath-encoded desires. This is not supernatural. This is supernatural. This is nature operating at its highest capacity. This is the quantum field doing what it was always designed to do: respond to conscious observation. And you, right now, with every breath you take from this moment forward, you are becoming the conscious observer the field has been waiting for. Not trying to become, becoming. Present tense, active voice, happening right now. Can you feel it? That shift in your chest? That subtle reorganization of energy? That sense that something has clicked into place, like a key finding its lock? That's not hope. That's not belief. That's recognition. The deepest part of you remembering what it's always known. You are breath embodied. You are observation made flesh. You are desire breathing itself into existence. The practices I've given you are training wheels. Eventually, you won't need them. Eventually, observer breath will be so natural, so integrated, that you won't think about it anymore. You'll just be it. Your breath will be your desire. Your desire will be your breath. And the two will merge so completely that reality, faithful mirror that it is, will have no choice but to reflect back the exact frequency you're emanating. This is the revelation. Not that you need to learn how to manifest, but that you need to remember you're already manifesting every moment with every breath. And all you're doing now is becoming conscious of it, deliberate about it, sovereign in it. The ancient observers spent lifetimes mastering this. You have it in your hands right now, in your lungs, in the space between your thoughts where pure awareness lives. And the beautiful thing, the profound thing, the thing that makes all of this so perfectly designed. You can start right now, not tomorrow, not after you finish this video. Right now, with your very next breath. Breathe in. Hold the quantum pause. Feel yourself as the observer, and exhale as the creator of your reality. Again, breathe in. Pause. Witness. Exhale. Create. One more time. Breath in. Pause. Become. Exhale. Manifest. This is it. This is the technology. This is the magic they've been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years. And it's yours. It's always been yours. You were just breathing unconsciously before. But that's over now. Welcome to Observer Breath. Welcome to conscious creation. Welcome to the life where breath and desire are one continuous flow, one sacred dance, one endless conversation between you and the universe that loves you enough to reorganize itself around your every intention. Now let's talk about what happens next. What this means for your life, for your purpose, for your role in the larger shift that's happening across human consciousness right now. Because you're not learning this just for you. You're learning this because you're meant to embody it, demonstrate it, become living proof that humans can navigate reality with conscious precision. Let's move into the final movement. The integration, the vision of what awaits when you fully step into your sovereignty as an awakened observer. So here we are, the end of the transmission. But really, the beginning of something else. Something that started the moment you found this video, or it found you. Something that's been building with every breath you've taken more consciously, every quantum pause you've held, every moment you've recognized yourself not as a passive witness to reality, but as its active co-creator. You know now what the first observers discovered. You understand now why it was hidden, why it's been fought against, why so few people fully wake up to their power. And you have now, in your hands and lungs and awareness, the actual practices, the technology, to bridge breath and desire until they become one inseparable motion. But knowing is not enough. Understanding is not enough. Even practice is not enough. What matters now is identity, who you decide to be, not just in this moment of inspiration, but in every moment that follows. Who you breathe as when no one is watching, when there's no video to remind you, when ordinary life resumes its noise and demands. Because here's the final truth, the one that determines whether this transmission becomes transformation or just becomes interesting information you once heard. You are not trying to become a conscious observer. You already are one. You've been one your entire life. You were just unconscious of it. And now you're not. That shift, from unconscious observation to conscious observation, is not a skill you develop. It's a memory you activate. It's a recognition of what you've always been, underneath all the programming, all the conditioning, all the forgetting. And once that recognition stabilizes, once you start breathing as the observer rather than as someone trying to learn how to observe, everything changes. Your relationship with time changes. You stop experiencing time as linear progression and start experiencing it as probability fields you can navigate. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, they're not a sequence you're trapped in. They're a landscape you can move through based on breath and attention. Your relationship with other people changes. You stop needing them to see you a certain way because you're no longer collapsing your identity based on external observation. You become so rooted in your own sovereign frequency that their projections slide off you like water off glass. Your relationship with desire changes most profoundly of all. You stop chasing. You stop grasping. You stop the exhausting performance of manifestation. Because you realize, desire is not something you acquire. It's something you become. And you become it through breath. Every inhale pulling that future version of you into this present moment. Every exhale releasing resistance to it. Every quantum pause being the moment of collapse, where possible becomes actual, where quantum becomes classical, where the version of you that was probability becomes the version of you that is presence. This is your life now, not someday, now. Walking through a world that most people experience as solid, fixed, unchangeable, but you know it's fluid, responsive, eager to reflect the frequency you're emanating. Seeing synchronicities that others miss because they're not paying attention, not breathing consciously, not observing with the precision of someone who knows reality is a conversation, not a monologue. You'll notice things, strange things, beautiful things, things that prove you're not crazy, you're not imagining it. This is really how reality works. You'll think about someone you need to talk to. Take 3 conscious breaths, and they'll call within the hour. You'll need information. Breathe with the symbol of your question, and the answer will appear in the next article you read, the next conversation you overhear, the next dream you wake from. You'll desire a shift in your circumstances, merge with the breath pattern of that shift, and reality will rearrange itself through a series of coincidences so perfect you'll have to laugh at the precision of the field. This will happen again and again until you stop being surprised by it, until conscious creation becomes your baseline, until you can no longer remember what it felt like to be powerless, victim, at the mercy of forces you couldn't control. But with this power comes responsibility. And this is not light responsibility. This is sacred responsibility. Because you cannot unknow this. You cannot go back to unconscious breathing and pretend you're not creating your reality. Every breath from now on is a choice. Every moment of observation is a vote for which timeline becomes real. And the timelines you choose, the reality you breathe into being, they don't just affect you. They affect everyone entangled with you, your family, your friends, your community, the morphic field of human consciousness itself. When you breathe consciously, you raise the frequency of the collective. When you breathe as embodied desire, you make it easier for others to access their own desires. When you become a walking demonstration of conscious creation, you give permission for others to wake up. This is why you're here. This is why the message found you. Not just to change your life, but to become a node in the network of awakened observers who are, right now, at this exact moment in history, shifting the probability field of the entire species. You are not alone in this. Thousands, maybe millions of people are waking up to the same truth. They're finding their own versions of this message, their own teachers, their own practices, but they're all arriving at the same destination: conscious observation of reality through intentional breath. And as more people wake up, as more observers remember their power, the field becomes more responsive. Reality becomes more fluid. The old structures built on unconscious compliance start to dissolve, not through force, through frequency. You're part of that dissolution. Every conscious breath you take is a small act of revolution. Every moment you refuse to breathe the old patterns, the survival patterns, the fear patterns, the scarcity patterns, you're withdrawing your energy from the systems that depend on your unconsciousness. And every moment you breathe as sovereign, as empowered, as the quantum creator you truly are, you're building the new paradigm. One breath at a time, one observation at a time, one collapsed wave function at a time. So what do you do now? Right now, today, this moment after the transmission ends, you breathe, consciously, with the quantum pause, with symbol, with desire merged so completely that you can't tell where you end and your fulfilled wish begins. You watch for synchronicities, and when they appear, and they will appear, faster and more frequently than you expect, you acknowledge them. 3 breaths. I am the observer. I see the pattern. I acknowledge the field. You practice, daily, not as obligation but as joy. Because conscious breathing is not work, it's play. It's the most intimate, most immediate form of reality co-creation available to human beings. And you trust. Trust the process. Trust the field. Trust that you didn't find this message by accident. Trust that everything, every synchronicity, every practice, every breath, is leading you exactly where you need to go. Because here's the thing about observer consciousness. Once you commit to it, really commit with your whole being, reality starts moving you. Not forcing you, not pushing you, but gently, precisely, orchestrating circumstances and opportunities and perfect timing in ways that make the path clear. You don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to have a plan. You just have to breathe, consciously, sovereignly. As the observer you've always been but are only now remembering how to be. This is the end of the transmission. But listen closely. Can you hear it? That hum underneath everything. That frequency that's been calling you, pulling you, whispering your name through the static of ordinary consciousness. That's your breath merging with your desires. That's quantum possibility collapsing into manifest reality. That's the sound of you waking up, finally and fully, to the truth that you are not in reality. You are of reality. You are reality observing itself, creating itself, breathing itself into infinite forms. And you get to choose which form, which timeline, which version of yourself and your life becomes actual. Choose consciously. Choose sovereignly. Choose from the deepest truth of who you are beneath all the noise, and breathe it into being. Right now. With your next inhale. With your next quantum pause. With your next exhale of intentional creation. You didn't find this video found you. Because somewhere in the field, the version of you that's already mastered this reached back through probability and time and space and whispered, "Wake up. Remember. You are the observer, and reality is waiting for you to notice it." Welcome home, conscious observer. Welcome home. Now breathe and watch what happens.